Hello and welcome to Black Lady Tales. My name is Dolores Marie Patterson. I am 54 years old. And I need you to take a deep breath before I tell you what happened on Christmas Day, because what I am about to share is something I never imagined I would survive, let alone have the courage to speak out loud. For 12 years, my family believed I was dead. They held a funeral. They buried an empty casket. They cried over a headstone with my name carved into cold granite. My daughter grew up visiting a grave, leaving flowers for a mother she thought had abandoned her through death. And the man who orchestrated all of it, my husband, Marcus Patterson, he stood at that funeral in a black suit, accepted condolences, and never once blinked. But I was not dead. I was very much alive, locked away in a psychiatric facility 200 miles from the life I had built, pumped full of medications I did not need, written off as a woman who had lost her mind. For over a decade, I screamed the truth into walls that did not care. I wrote letters that were never delivered. I watched the seasons change through barred windows while my daughter blew out birthday candles, believing her mother was gone. They tried to erase me. They almost succeeded. But on December 25th, I drove to my daughter's house, knocked on her door, and watched her face as she realized the woman standing on her porch was supposed to be buried 6 feet underground. And then she asked me a question that will haunt me for the rest of my life. Let me take you back to that morning. I woke up at 5:47 a.m. in a motel room off the interstate, room 114 at a place called the Pinecrest Lodge, $43 a night, cash only. The heater rattled against the thin walls. The sheets smelled like industrial bleach. I had been out of Willowbrook Psychiatric Facility for exactly 71 days, and in that time I had learned 3 things: how to sleep with one eye open, how to stretch $47 across 2 months, and where my daughter now lived. Keisha Monique Patterson Williams, 26 years old, married to a man named Jerome Williams, a youth pastor at Grace Community Church, mother to a 3-year-old son named Isaiah, homeowner, employed, alive. I had found her through public records, through church bulletins posted online, through a Facebook profile she did not know I spent hours staring at in the library's computer lab. Every photograph was a knife. Her wedding day, I was not there. Her baby shower, I was not there. Her son's first birthday, his second birthday, his third, I was not there for any of it. Marcus had taken 12 years from me. He had taken my daughter's childhood, her teenage years, her entire journey into womanhood. He had taken her wedding. He had taken the birth of my grandchild. He had taken every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, every ordinary Tuesday when a mother should be able to pick up the phone and hear her baby's voice. But he was not going to take this one. If you are connecting with my story right now, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button. It tells me you are with me, and it means more to this grandmother's heart than you could ever know. Subscribe to Black Lady Tales so you do not miss what happens next, and tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is where you are. I want to know how far a voice can travel when it finally refuses to be silent. Now, let me tell you about that drive. I had rented a car the day before, a gray Nissan Sentra with a small dent in the rear bumper and an air freshener shaped like a pine tree hanging from the mirror. The folder sat on the passenger seat beside me, manila, thick, held together with a rubber band. Inside that folder was 12 years of evidence, 12 years of proof. 12 years of everything Marcus thought he had successfully buried, along with my reputation. The drive from the motel to Keisha's neighborhood took 43 minutes. I passed through towns decorated for the holiday, wreaths on lampposts, nativity scenes in front yards, inflatable Santas waving mechanical arms at passing cars. Families walked into churches for Christmas morning services. Children in new coats ran across parking lots clutching toys. I had missed 12 Christmases. The last one I remembered, the real last one, Keisha was 14 years old. She had asked for a journal with a lock and key, a specific shade of lip gloss, and permission to stay up past midnight on New Year's Eve. I had wrapped her gifts in silver paper with red bows. I had baked a honey ham with pineapple glaze. I had no idea that in less than 6 weeks, I would be dragged out of my own home in the middle of the night, accused of being a danger to myself and others. I pushed that memory down. I had to focus. The GPS announced the final turn, and then I saw it. Keisha's house was beautiful. A 2-story home with cream-colored siding and black shutters, a wraparound porch strung with white lights, a fresh wreath on the front door. Through the large bay window, I could see the glow of a Christmas tree, could see figures moving around inside, could see the warm, golden light of a family gathering. And then I saw the car in the driveway, a black Mercedes-Benz S-Class, current model, vanity plate MPAT1. Marcus was inside. My stomach dropped. I had known he might be there. Of course he would be there. It was Christmas. He was still playing the role of devoted father and grandfather. But seeing that car made everything suddenly, terrifyingly real. I was about to walk into a room where my own daughter believed I was a ghost, where my ex-husband had spent 12 years building a fortress of lies, where everyone I had ever loved had mourned me and moved on. I sat in that rental car for 19 minutes. I watched through the window as shapes moved behind the glass. I saw a woman I did not recognize pour something into a glass. I saw a man I assumed was Jerome cross the living room with a small child on his hip. I saw my daughter, my baby, my Keisha, appear in the frame for just a moment, laughing at something, her hand on her chest. She looked so much like my mother. I watched Marcus emerge from somewhere in the back of the house, champagne flute in hand, gesturing broadly as he spoke. Even from this distance, I could see the performance, the charm, the absolute confidence of a man who believed he had gotten away with everything. My hands were shaking. Should I knock? Should I wait until he left? Should I approach Keisha alone somewhere else, somewhere without an audience? What if she did not believe me? What if she screamed? What if she called the police and they dragged me back to a facility because her father convinced them I was dangerous? For one terrible moment, I considered driving away. But then I thought about the letters. All those letters I had written from inside those walls. Letters to Keisha that Marcus had intercepted. Letters that never arrived. Letters where I begged my daughter to find me, to help me, to believe me. I thought about the birthdays I had spent staring at ceilings, the holidays I had spent in a medicated haze, the years I had lost while this man raised my child on a foundation of lies and let her believe her mother had simply died. I had not survived 12 years of hell to hide in a rental car. I stepped out of that car, walked up the path lined with candy cane lights, and pressed my finger against the doorbell. When the door swung open, I saw my daughter's face for the first time in 12 years, and in that split second before recognition hit her, I saw the exact moment her world shattered. Then she said 3 words that I will carry with me until the day I actually die. The doorbell echoed through the house, a cheerful 2-tone chime that felt obscene given what was about to happen. I heard footsteps approaching, light steps, quick. Someone eager to greet whoever had arrived on Christmas Day. The door handle turned, and then it swung open, and there she was. Keisha. My daughter stood in the doorway wearing a burgundy sweater dress and gold hoop earrings. Her hair was longer than I remembered, styled in loose curls that fell past her shoulders. She had my mother's cheekbones, my father's eyes. She was 26 years old, and the last time I had touched her face, she was a gangly 14-year-old who still slept with a stuffed elephant named Peanut. For a moment, she just stared at me. Her expression was polite at first, the face you make when you open the door expecting a neighbor or a delivery person. Then her brow furrowed, her head tilted slightly. I watched her eyes move across my face, watched her brain try to reconcile what she was seeing with what she knew to be true. Her mother was dead. Her mother was buried. Her mother could not possibly be standing on the front porch in a navy blue coat and worn shoes, holding a manila folder like a weapon. The color drained from her face. Her hand flew to her mouth. She stumbled backward, catching herself on the doorframe. Her chest started heaving, and a sound came out of her throat, a sound I cannot describe except to say it was the noise someone makes when reality cracks in half. And then she said it. "Why are you still alive?" Those 4 words hit me like a physical blow. I understood in the space between heartbeats that she was not being cruel. She was not angry. She was genuinely asking. In her mind, her mother had died in a car accident 12 years ago. In her mind, there was a grave with my name on it. In her mind, she had spent more than a decade grieving a woman who no longer existed. So why was that woman standing in front of her now? "Keisha," I said, and my voice cracked on her name. "Baby, I am so sorry. I am so sorry for what you have been told, but I am real. I am your mother, and I never died." She shook her head violently, backing further into the house. No, this can't. Daddy said..." "Keisha, who is it?" A man appeared behind her. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a pastor's collar beneath a cardigan. This had to be Jerome. He looked at me with the same polite confusion Keisha had worn seconds before. "Ma'am, can we help you?" he asked, his hand moving protectively to his wife's shoulder. "I'm her mother," I said. Jerome's face flickered with something: concern, confusion, alarm. He looked at Keisha, who was now crying silently, tears streaming down her face as she stared at me like I was an apparition. "That's not possible," Jerome said carefully, his voice dropping into the calm register of someone trained to handle crisis. "Keisha's mother passed away. There must be some mistake." "There is no mistake," I replied, holding his gaze, "and there was no accident. I have been alive this entire time, and the man who told you otherwise is standing somewhere in this house right now." More footsteps, voices calling out. "What's going on? Who's at the door? Is everything okay?" An older woman appeared in the hallway. I recognized her as Marcus's sister, Charlene. She froze mid-step, her wineglass suspended in the air. Her face went through the same journey Keisha's had: confusion, recognition, horror. "Oh my God," Charlene whispered. "Oh my dear God. Somebody tell me what's happening." A younger voice. One of Marcus's nieces, maybe. The hallway was filling with people now, faces I half recognized, faces that had aged 12 years since I had last seen them. They stared at me like I had crawled out of the grave. In a way, I had. And then the crowd parted, and there he was. Marcus Patterson walked toward the front door with a champagne flute in one hand and a smile that had not yet registered the danger. He was 58 now, grayer at the temples, a little heavier around the middle, but still carrying himself with that same easy confidence that had fooled me for 15 years. "What's all the commotion?" he asked, still smiling. "Sounds like someone..." He saw me. The champagne flute trembled in his hand. His smile did not fade. It froze. His eyes locked onto mine, and in that moment I watched 12 years of carefully constructed lies start to crumble behind his pupils. I saw the flash of terror he tried to bury. I saw the calculations begin: how to explain this, how to spin this, how to make me disappear again. "Dolores?" His voice was strangled. He cleared his throat and tried again. What? Hello, Marcus." The silence in that hallway was absolute. Even the Christmas music playing softly in the background seemed to fade. Everyone was looking at Marcus now, watching his reaction, waiting for him to explain how his dead wife was standing at the door. He recovered fast. He always did. "Everyone, please stay calm," he said, setting down the champagne flute on a nearby table. His voice shifted into concerned husband mode, the same voice he had used 12 years ago when he told the doctors I was a danger to myself. This is clearly a very confused woman who needs help. Keisha, honey, step back. Someone call 911. "Do not call anyone," I said, my voice steady. I did not raise it. I did not need to. "My name is Dolores Marie Patterson. I was born on March 14, 1970, at Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta, Georgia. I married Marcus Anthony Patterson on June 22, 1996. I gave birth to Keisha Monique Patterson on February 8th, 1998. And 12 years ago, my husband had me committed to a psychiatric facility against my will, stole my inheritance, divorced me while I was too drugged to understand what I was signing, and told everyone I had died in a car accident. Gasps rippled through the hallway. "That's insane," Marcus spat. The charm was slipping now, replaced by something harder. "This woman is mentally ill. She's been in an institution for over a decade because she's unstable, and now she's shown up here to harass my family on Christmas." "I was in an institution," I agreed calmly, "because you put me there. Because you drugged me at the Morrison dinner party and staged a breakdown in front of witnesses. Because you told doctors I had been experiencing delusions for months. Because you wanted me gone so you could be with your mistress and take everything I had." "Daddy?" Keisha's voice was small, broken. "Daddy, what is she talking about?" "Baby girl, don't listen to her." Marcus moved toward Keisha, his arms open. "This woman is sick. She needs help. We should feel sorry for her, but we cannot let her—" "I visited Mama's grave last month," Keisha interrupted, her voice shaking. "I brought flowers. I sat there and talked to her for an hour. You told me she died. You said there was an accident. You said she was gone. Because she was gone." Marcus's voice rose for the first time. "She was gone from our lives, from her right mind. There is no body in that grave." Everyone turned to look at me. "The casket you buried 12 years ago is empty," I said. "I never died, Keisha. I was never in any accident. Your father told you a story, and because you loved him, because you trusted him, you believed it. But I have been alive this entire time, and I have spent the last 12 years fighting to get back to you." Keisha's knees buckled. Jerome caught her, holding her up as she sobbed against his chest. In the back of the group, I noticed a woman I did not recognize. Younger, mid-30s maybe, light-skinned, elegant, wearing expensive jewelry. She was watching Marcus with an expression I knew too well, the dawning realization that the man she loved might not be who she thought he was. This had to be Vivian, the new wife. "Please," I said, looking at Keisha, at Jerome, at the stunned faces filling the hallway. "I am not here to cause chaos. I am not here to hurt anyone. I only want my daughter to know the truth, and I have proof. I have documentation for everything I am telling you. All I ask is that you let me inside and hear me out." Marcus stepped toward me with that same charming smile he used to wear when he told me I was imagining things, when he made me question my own mind, but I was not the same woman he had locked away. I reached into my coat and pulled out a thick manila folder. "Everything you told them," I said, looking directly into his eyes. "Every lie, every document you forged, every person you paid to keep me silenced, it's all in here. So before you say another word, you might want to ask yourself, what do I know and what can I prove? I need to take you back to the beginning so you can understand how a woman ends up buried alive." I met Marcus Patterson in the spring of 1995. I was 25 years old, working as an administrative coordinator at an architecture firm in downtown Atlanta. He walked into the office one afternoon to meet with one of the senior partners, and I swear the air in the room changed when he smiled. He was 30 years old, 6'2", with a jawline that could have been carved from marble, and a voice like warm honey over gravel. He wore a tailored suit and Italian leather shoes. He held doors open. He remembered names. When he shook my hand and introduced himself, he looked me directly in the eyes and held the handshake for just a moment longer than necessary. "Marcus Patterson," he said, "and you are far too beautiful to be stuck behind a desk." I should have recognized the flattery for what it was, but I was 25. I was lonely. I had spent my 20s caring for my sick mother, watching my father drink himself into an early grave, working 2 jobs to pay off their debts. No one had ever looked at me the way Marcus did, like I was something precious, something worth pursuing. We married 14 months later. The ceremony was small but elegant, a garden wedding at a historic estate, outside the city. I wore my mother's pearls. Marcus's mother cried. My maid of honor, a college friend named Denise, told me I had found one of the good ones. For a while, I believed her. The first year of marriage was everything I had dreamed. Marcus bought us a 4-bedroom colonial in a tree-lined suburb. He surprised me with jewelry on random Tuesdays. He cooked dinner when I worked late. When I told him I was pregnant in the summer of 1997, he lifted me off the ground and spun me in circles, laughing like a child. Keisha was born the following February, 7 pounds 4 ounces, with a full head of dark curls and her father's dimples. I held her in that hospital room and made a silent promise. I would give her the stable, loving childhood I never had. I would protect her from chaos. I would be present in ways my own parents could not be. I did not know that the chaos would come from inside my own home. The changes were subtle at first, so subtle I did not recognize them as warning signs. Marcus began suggesting I cut back my hours at work. You should be home with the baby, he said, and it sounded like care. Then he suggested I leave the job entirely. I make enough for both of us. You deserve to rest. It sounded like generosity. But soon rest became isolation. He did not like my college friends visiting. They were loud or drank too much or put ideas in your head. He thought my cousin Pauline was jealous of what we have. He believed my coworkers only pretended to like me. One by one, my connections to the outside world were severed, not violently, not dramatically, but through a steady drip of criticism and concern. The finances came next. Marcus moved all our accounts into his name. It's simpler this way, he explained. I handle the business side of things. You focus on Keisha. He gave me a household allowance deposited into a separate account each month. Not enough to save, just enough to manage. Then came the gaslighting. It started small. I would put my keys on the hook by the door, and the next day they would be in a drawer across the house. I knew I had not moved them, but Marcus would look at me with such genuine concern and say, "Honey, you put them there last night. Don't you remember?" Conversations I clearly remembered having, he insisted never happened. Appointments I knew I had kept, he claimed I had missed. I started writing things down in a journal, trying to track my own reality. When Marcus found the journal, he sat me down with tears in his eyes and said, "I think you might need to talk to someone. These memory problems are getting worse." By the time Keisha started school, I was seeing a psychiatrist Marcus had personally selected. Dr. Hendricks was a thin, gray man who listened to Marcus's concerns more than he listened to mine. He prescribed medication for anxiety, then medication for depression, then something to help me sleep, then something to help me wake up. I was being chemically sedated in my own home, and I did not even realize it. What I did not know, what I would not learn until years later, was that Marcus had been having an affair since Keisha was 5 years old. Her name was Cassandra, a real estate agent 20 years younger than me. He wanted out of our marriage, but he did not want a divorce. A divorce meant splitting assets. It meant custody battles. It meant Dolores walking away with half of everything he had built and everything I had inherited from my mother's life insurance policy. So he built a different kind of exit. The night of December 4th, 2012, we attended a holiday dinner party at the home of Bernard Morrison, one of Marcus's business partners. I remember getting dressed. I remember Marcus handing me a glass of champagne before we left, telling me to loosen up because I seemed tense. I remember the first hour of the party, small talk, hors d'oeuvres, Christmas music playing softly, and then the room started spinning. I could not stand, I could not speak clearly. I stumbled into a table and knocked over a display of crystal glasses. When Bernard's wife tried to help me up, I swung my arm wildly and hit her in the face. I did not mean to. I could not control my own body. But the room full of witnesses saw something else. They saw a woman having a psychotic break. Marcus was the picture of devastated concern. He apologized profusely. He helped load me into the car, and instead of taking me home, he drove directly to Willowbrook Psychiatric Facility, where he had already made arrangements. I woke up 48 hours later in a locked ward. The first week, I screamed. I demanded to see my daughter. I demanded a lawyer. I told anyone who would listen that my husband had drugged me, that this was a setup, that I was not crazy. But the doctors had already spoken to Marcus. They had his carefully documented history of my episodes. They had statements from witnesses at the Morrison party. And every time I protested, every time I raised my voice, every time I cried, it was noted in my file as evidence of instability. I learned quickly that fighting made things worse. So I stopped fighting. I became compliant. I took the medications they gave me, even though they made me feel like I was drowning in fog. I sat through group therapy sessions and said the right words. I played the game, hoping that if I cooperated, they would let me go. They did not let me go. Months passed, then a year. I wrote letters to Keisha every single week, pages and pages telling her I loved her, begging her to come visit, promising I would explain everything. I gave those letters to the staff to mail. I did not know that Marcus had arranged for all my outgoing correspondence to be intercepted. My letters were marked "Return to Sender" and filed away in a box I would not see for 12 years. In the spring of 2014, a woman from the facility's administrative office brought me papers to sign. My hands were shaking from the medication. My mind clouded, my vision blurred. She pointed to lines and said, "Sign here and here, initial here." I did not know I was signing divorce papers. I did not know Marcus was dissolving our marriage while I was too sedated to understand what I was agreeing to. By the end of that year, I was officially divorced, legally separated from any claim to the assets we had built together, and my husband had told everyone, including our daughter, that I had died. He staged a funeral. I learned this later after I got out. He bought a casket. He selected a plot at Rosewood Memorial Cemetery. He stood at a grave with nothing inside and wept as people offered condolences. He let Keisha, at 14 years old, believe her mother was dead. And then he married Vivian 2 years later and moved on. Meanwhile, I was rotting inside that facility, cycling through medications and therapists in years that blurred together like watercolors left in the rain. I stopped counting the days. I stopped believing anyone would come for me. I became a ghost in the halls, a patient they had written off, a woman with no visitors and no hope. Then, in the fall of 2023, something changed. Her name was Dr. Michelle Williams, a Black woman in her 50s, new to Willowbrook, brought in to conduct evaluations of long-term patients. She walked into my room on a Tuesday afternoon, sat down across from me and said, "Tell me your story, the real one, not what's in your file." I almost did not answer. I had learned that speaking the truth only led to more medication, more notes about my delusions, more time added to my sentence. But something in her eyes made me try one more time. I told her everything. Dr. Williams did not dismiss me. She did not adjust my medication. Instead, she started investigating. She pulled records. She traced the documentation surrounding my commitment. She discovered inconsistencies, signatures that did not match, procedures that had been skipped, financial arrangements that suggested my stay was being paid for by someone who wanted me forgotten. The unraveling took 18 months. By the summer of 2024, I had been weaned off medications I never needed. I had undergone proper psychiatric evaluation, confirming I showed no signs of the disorders I had been diagnosed with. I had a lawyer, a woman Dr. Williams connected me with, who filed motions for my release. On October 15, 2024, I walked out of Willowbrook Psychiatric Facility for the first time in 12 years. I had a plastic bag with my belongings, old clothes, a Bible, a photograph of Keisha as a baby that I had somehow kept hidden all those years. I had $47 in cash. I had no phone, no car, no home, And I had a fire in my chest that had been burning since the moment they locked those doors behind me, but I also had something else, the folder. The evidence Dr. Williams and my lawyer had compiled, proof of the forged commitment papers, proof of the intercepted letters, proof of the fraudulent death certificate Marcus had filed, records of the financial transfers made in the weeks after my imprisonment. I did not know where my daughter was. I did not know who had believed the lies. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I was going to find my child. I was going to face the man who stole my life. And I was going to tell the truth in front of everyone who ever looked at my photograph and said, "Rest in peace." It took me 2 months to find Keisha's address, and I chose Christmas Day on purpose, because Marcus always loved an audience. The living room fell silent except for the soft hum of Christmas carols still playing from a speaker somewhere in the kitchen. Jerome had ushered everyone into the space: Charlene, 2 of Marcus's nieces, an elderly uncle I vaguely remembered from years ago, and Vivian, who stood apart from the group with her arms crossed tightly over her chest. The Christmas tree twinkled in the corner, oblivious to the devastation unfolding beneath its branches. Wrapping paper from earlier gift exchanges still littered the floor. The smell of honey-glazed ham drifted in from the dining room, growing cold. I stood before them like a prosecutor before a jury. The manila folder felt heavy in my hands, not from its physical weight, but from everything it contained. 12 years of truth, compressed into documents and photographs and official statements. Marcus positioned himself near the fireplace, arms folded, jaw set. He was still performing confidence, but I could see the cracks forming. His left eye twitched slightly. His fingers kept curling and uncurling at his sides. "This is ridiculous," he announced to the room. "We're going to stand here on Christmas Day and listen to the ravings of a mentally ill woman? She spent 12 years in a psychiatric facility. That should tell you everything you need to know." "Then let her show what she has," Jerome said quietly. His voice carried the calm authority of a man accustomed to mediating conflict. "If it's all lies, the documents will prove that." I set the folder on the coffee table and opened it. The first document was the psychiatric commitment order from December 2012. I held it up so everyone could see, then passed it to Keisha, who sat on the edge of the sofa with trembling hands. "This is the order that put me in Willowbrook," I explained. "Look at the bottom. Look at the signatures." Keisha studied the paper, her brow furrowing. The attending physician who supposedly evaluated me that night was Dr. Raymond Foster. According to hospital records my lawyer obtained, Dr. Foster was at a medical conference in Chicago on December 4, 2012. He could not have examined me because he was 700 miles away. I pulled out the second sheet. Here is his conference registration and hotel receipt from that date. The room stirred. Charlene leaned forward, squinting at the documents. "Those are fabricated," Marcus said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. "She had 12 years to manufacture fake evidence." I did not respond to him. I simply pulled out the next document. "This is my death certificate, the one Marcus filed with the state of Georgia in February 2013. I handed it to Jerome, who examined it with growing horror on his face. "Look at the date of birth listed." Jerome read aloud. "March 14, 1972. I was born in 1970, not 1972. Marcus got my birth year wrong when he forged the document. A small mistake. But mistakes like that do not happen on legitimate death certificates, because legitimate death certificates are created from official records, records that have the correct information." Keisha looked up at her father. "Daddy?" Marcus said nothing. I continued, pulling out bank statements next. In the weeks after I was committed, Marcus liquidated my mother's life insurance trust, the inheritance she left specifically to me. $180,000, transferred in 3 separate transactions to accounts in his name only. I spread the statements across the coffee table. The numbers were highlighted in yellow. The dates were circled in red. The evidence was undeniable. "I never touched that money," Marcus said, but his voice cracked. That was for household expenses, for Keisha's education, for Cassandra Mitchell, I interrupted calmly. Your mistress. The woman you were seeing for 3 years before you had me committed. The woman you bought a Mercedes for 6 weeks after you stole my inheritance. Gasps rippled through the room. Charlene put her hand over her mouth. I have the vehicle registration here if anyone wants to see it. I held up another document. Purchased February 28, 2013, registered to Cassandra Mitchell, paid in full, cash. Marcus's face had gone gray. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out, but I was not finished. These, I said, pulling out a thick stack of envelopes held together with a rubber band, are the letters I wrote to Keisha from Willowbrook, one every single week for the first 3 years, then one every month after that, when I started losing hope that they would ever reach her. I handed the stack to Keisha. Her hands shook as she took them. Look at the envelopes. Every single one is marked Return to Sender. And if you look closely at the handwriting, Keisha's breath caught in her throat. She looked up at Marcus, then back at the envelope in her hand. That's Daddy's handwriting, she whispered. He intercepted every letter I sent. He made sure you never knew I was alive, that I was trying to reach you, that I never stopped loving you for a single day. Tears streamed down Keisha's face. She clutched the letters to her chest like they were pieces of me she had been missing for 12 years. But that is not the worst of it, I said softly, because I also have these. I reached into the folder and pulled out another stack of envelopes, smaller, written in a younger hand, decorated with stickers and drawings. Keisha recognized them immediately. The sound that came out of her was something between a sob and a scream. Those are mine, she choked out. I wrote those. I wrote letters to you after you died. I wrote them for years. Daddy said he put them on your grave. He said you would receive them in heaven. They were in a storage unit, I said, my own voice breaking now. A unit Marcus rented in Marietta. My lawyer found the receipt. These letters were never placed on any grave. They were locked away in a box, hidden, kept from me, just like my letters were kept from you. Keisha held a letter she had written at 15. I could see the crayon hearts she had drawn in the margins. I could see the words, I miss you, Mama, visible through the thin paper. You kept these? Keisha turned to Marcus, her voice rising. She never got any of them? All those years I sat at that grave talking to nothing. You knew? You knew she was alive? Marcus took a step backward. For the first time, he looked afraid. Keisha, baby girl, you have to understand. Do not call me that. Her voice was ice. Do not ever call me that again. I pulled out the final document. This is an official statement from Dr. Michelle Williams, the psychiatrist at Willowbrook, who reviewed my case. It confirms that my original commitment was based on fraudulent documentation, that I showed no signs of the disorders I was diagnosed with, and that I was wrongfully held for over a decade. I read the key passage aloud. After extensive evaluation and investigation, it is my professional conclusion that Dolores Marie Patterson was the victim of deliberate medical fraud. Her commitment was orchestrated through falsified documents and paid cooperation from facility staff. She should never have been institutionalized and poses no danger to herself or others. The room had transformed. The family members who had entered this space believing Marcus's story now stared at him like he was a stranger. Charlene had moved physically away from her brother. The elderly uncle shook his head slowly, muttering something under his breath. Vivian had not moved from her spot near the doorway, but her expression had shifted from skepticism to something else. Recognition, perhaps, or fear. Marcus looked around the room at the faces of everyone who had believed him for 12 years. His charm had run dry, his explanations had collapsed, and then Vivian, his current wife, spoke for the first time. She said, "Marcus, what happened to your first wife? The one before Dolores? You told me she died in a car accident, too." The room went dead silent. Every eye turned to Marcus, and I realized that I might not be the only woman this man had tried to bury. The question hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. Vivian stood rigid near the doorway, her designer handbag clutched against her chest. Her voice had been steady when she asked it, but I could see her hands trembling. "Diane," Vivian continued, her eyes locked on Marcus. "You told me Diane died in a car accident in 1994. You said it was too painful to talk about. You said that's why you never introduced me to her family, why there were no photographs, why you changed the subject every time I asked." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Vivian, this is not the time." "When is the time, Marcus?" Her voice rose. "Because I'm standing here watching you get exposed for locking your second wife in a mental institution for 12 years, and now I'm wondering what really happened to your first one." Charlene stepped forward, her face pale. "Marcus, what is she talking about? I remember Diane. I was at your wedding. What happened to her?" "She died," Marcus snapped. "She died in an accident. This has nothing to do with—" "Did she?" I asked quietly. "Or did she disappear, like I did?" The room shifted. I watched the family members exchange glances, watched the terrible math happening behind their eyes. 2 wives, 2 car accidents, 2 women who simply ceased to exist. Keisha rose from the sofa. Her face was streaked with tears, but her eyes had hardened into something fierce. She crossed the room until she stood directly in front of her father. "Tell me the truth," she said. "For once in your life, tell me the truth. What did you do to my mother, and what did you do to Diane?" Marcus's composure finally cracked. "Your mother was weak," he spat, the charming mask dissolving into something ugly. "She couldn't handle the life I built. She was always crying, always complaining, always making me feel like the villain when I was the one providing everything. I gave her a beautiful home. I gave her financial security. And what did she give me? Nagging, suspicion, accusations. I accused you of having an affair," I said steadily, "because you were having an affair, because you drove me to it." His voice exploded through the room. "You were never enough. You were never what I needed. And when I found someone who actually appreciated me, you couldn't handle it. You fell apart. You forced my hand." "I forced nothing. You drugged me, Marcus. You put something in my champagne at that party and watched me lose control of my own body. Then you had me committed to cover your tracks." "I did what I had to do." He was shouting now, all pretense of civility abandoned. "You think I wanted to go through a divorce? You think I wanted to split everything down the middle, watch you take half of what I built, spend years in court fighting over custody? This was cleaner. This was easier. And you would have been fine if you had just stayed quiet and accepted your situation." The room recoiled. Even Charlene, his own sister, stepped backward as if his words were physically repulsive. "Cleaner?" Keisha's voice was barely a whisper. "You stole 12 years of my life with my mother because it was cleaner?" "I protected you," Marcus insisted, turning to his daughter with desperate eyes. "I protected you from a mother who was unstable, who would have damaged you." "She wasn't unstable," Keisha screamed. "You made her seem unstable. You drugged her and locked her away and told me she was dead. I cried myself to sleep for years. I went to therapy because I couldn't process losing my mother. I named my son after your father because I thought you were the only parent I had left." She was sobbing now, her words tumbling out between gasps. "You let me put flowers on an empty grave. You let me write letters to a dead woman who was sitting in a hospital 200 miles away, waiting for someone to believe her. You stole my mother from me, and you made me complicit in it because I trusted you." Marcus reached for her arm. "Keisha, don't touch me." Jerome moved then, stepping between father and daughter. His frame blocked Marcus completely. "I think you need to leave," Jerome said, his pastoral calm barely containing the fury beneath. and I think the police need to be involved in this conversation." "The police?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "On what grounds? I haven't committed any crime. She was legally committed. The divorce was legal. The death certificate was forged," I finished. "Fraud, forgery, false imprisonment, theft, and depending on what they find when they investigate Diane's disappearance, possibly more." Jerome had already pulled out his phone. He stepped into the hallway, his voice low as he spoke to the 911 operator. Marcus looked around the room like a cornered animal. His eyes landed on Vivian, who was quietly gathering her coat and purse. "Vivian, don't," he said. "Don't leave. This is all being blown out of proportion." "I'm going to my sister's house," Vivian said without looking at him. "And tomorrow I'm calling a divorce attorney. And if the police want to talk to me about anything you may have told me over the years, I will cooperate fully." She walked out the front door without another word. Marcus lunged toward the exit, but Charlene's husband and another cousin blocked his path. "You're not going anywhere," the cousin said grimly. "Not until the police get here." Marcus spun around, searching for an ally, finding none. Every face in that room, family members who had loved him, trusted him, defended him, now looked at him with disgust. In the chaos, I felt a small hand slip into mine. I looked down to see Keisha beside me. Her face was a wreck of tears and running makeup, but she was looking at me, really looking at me, for the first time since I had walked through that door. "Mama," she whispered, I'm so sorry I believed him. I'm so sorry I didn't look for you. I'm so sorry." I pulled her into my arms. For 12 years, I had dreamed of this moment. I had imagined it in my hospital bed, during sleepless nights, in the fog of medications that tried to erase my memories. I had pictured holding my daughter again so many times that I feared the reality would never match the dream. But this was better. This was real. This was my baby girl in my arms, crying against my shoulder, alive and whole and finally knowing the truth. "You have nothing to apologize for," I said into her hair. "You were a child. He manipulated all of us, but I'm here now. I'm here and I'm not going anywhere." A small voice interrupted us. "Mommy? Grandpa?" We turned to see little Isaiah standing in the hallway clutching a stuffed dinosaur, his eyes wide with confusion at all the crying adults. Keisha wiped her face and moved toward him, but then she stopped. She looked back at me. "Isaiah," she said softly, "come here, baby. There's someone I want you to meet." She lifted him onto her hip and carried him toward me. "This is your grandma," Keisha said, her voice breaking. "Your real grandma. She went away for a long time, but she's back now." Isaiah studied me with the frank curiosity of a 3-year-old. Then he reached out one small hand and touched my face. "Hi, Grandma," he said. I could not speak. I simply gathered both of them, my daughter and my grandson, into my arms and held on as sirens wailed in the distance. The police arrived 17 minutes later. Marcus was escorted out in handcuffs in front of the neighbors he had charmed for years, in front of the family he had manipulated, and in front of the woman he had tried to erase from existence. As they put him in the back of the squad car, he looked at me through the window. I expected to see anger, or hatred, or fear, but what I saw was worse. He smiled, and in that smile I understood something that chilled me to my bones. Marcus Patterson had no remorse. He only had regret that he got caught. The days after Christmas were some of the hardest and most beautiful of my life. Keisha and I talked for hours. We sat at her kitchen table while Jerome kept Isaiah occupied, and we excavated 12 years of lost time. She told me about her high school graduation, how she had worn my mother's pearls and wished I could see her walk across the stage. She told me about meeting Jerome at a church retreat, how he had made her laugh for the first time since my death. She told me about learning she was pregnant, how she had cried in the bathroom because she could not call her mother to share the news. And I told her everything, the facility, the medications, the letters that never arrived, The day I finally found someone who believed me, we did not rebuild overnight. Some days Keisha could not look at me without crying from guilt. Some days I struggled with anger that came from nowhere, rage at the years I could never get back, at the milestones that happened without me, at the grandchild who had lived 3 years not knowing I existed. We started family therapy in January. A kind woman named Dr. Okonkwo helped us navigate the complicated grief of reunion, because it was grief, even in the joy. We were mourning the relationship we should have had while trying to build the one we could still have. The legal process moved faster than I expected. Marcus was charged with fraud, forgery, and false imprisonment. My lawyer filed civil suits for theft and emotional damages. And when investigators began looking into Diane Patterson, Marcus's first wife, they discovered she had never been reported dead through official channels. There was no death certificate, no accident report, no burial record. She had simply vanished in 1994. Vivian True, to her word, cooperated fully with authorities. She provided access to Marcus's financial records, his private storage units, his computers. What they found opened additional investigations I am not permitted to discuss while the case is ongoing. As of today, Marcus Patterson is awaiting trial. He has been denied bail. I found a small apartment in February about 15 minutes from Keisha's house. It is modest, 1 bedroom, a galley kitchen, a bathroom with a window that gets afternoon light, but it is mine. My name is on the lease. My photographs hang on the walls. My grandmother's quilt covers my bed. For the first time in 12 years, I have a home. Isaiah calls me Grandma D now. He asks me to read him bedtime stories when I visit. Always the same book about a bunny who gets lost and finds his way home. He does not understand why his mother cries sometimes when she watches us together. He does not know the weight of what we lost or the miracle of what we found. He just knows that his grandmother loves him, and that is enough for now. There are still hard days. Grief does not follow a schedule. Some mornings I wake up disoriented, forgetting for a moment that I am free. Some nights I dream of long hallways and locked doors and the sound of my own voice echoing off walls that never answered back. But I have learned that healing is not about erasing the past. It is about refusing to let the past erase you. People ask me about forgiveness. They want to know if I have forgiven Marcus for what he did. The honest answer is no, and I do not believe I owe him forgiveness. What I have done, what I continue to do every day, is release the weight of carrying his crimes. I will not let hatred poison the years I have left. I will not give him that power. But forgiveness implies that what he did can be made right, and some things cannot be made right. Some things can only be survived. Keisha forgave herself, though. That was the hardest journey to watch. For months she carried the guilt of believing her father's lies, of not searching for me, of mourning a woman who was still alive. I reminded her as often as I could. She was a child. She trusted her parent. That is not a character flaw. That is how children are supposed to be. This Christmas, exactly 1 year after I knocked on that door, I am setting the table at Keisha's house again. But this time, I am not a ghost. I am not a visitor. I am not a woman fighting to prove she exists. This time, there is a place card with my name on it. Dolores, right between Keisha and Isaiah, where a mother and grandmother belongs. Jerome is carving the turkey. Keisha is laughing at something on her phone. Isaiah is running through the living room with a toy airplane, making engine noises at the top of his lungs. And I am standing in the kitchen, holding a dish of sweet potato casserole, watching my family through the doorway. They tried to bury me. They did not know I was a seed. If you are watching this and you feel trapped, if someone in your life is making you question your own reality, isolating you from the people who love you, convincing you that you are crazy or broken or worthless, I need you to hear me. You are not crazy. You are not broken. You are not alone. There are people who will believe you. There are systems that can help you, and there is a life waiting for you on the other side of that darkness, even if you cannot see it right now. Fight for yourself. Document everything. Tell someone. And do not let anyone, no matter how charming, no matter how powerful, no matter how convincing, steal your voice or your story. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be heard. You deserve a place at the table. If you connected with my story, please take a moment to hit that like button. It means more to this grandmother's heart than you know. Subscribe to Black Lady Tales so you never miss these stories that need to be told. And tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is there. I want to know how far a voice can travel when it refuses to be silenced. Thank you for sitting with me, for listening, and for believing. From my table to yours, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and may you always have a place where you belong.